Psalms 18 for tonight, starting at verse 1. This is a psalm of David, and it's a psalm that it says that he wrote on the day when the Lord rescued him from the hand of all of his enemies and from the hand of Saul. And we don't know, it's hard to actually date the sequence of events in this time period of David's life, but some historians and commentaries estimate that he spent 8 to 10 years running from Saul. It was definitely over 7 years that he hid in caves and tried to elude Saul at every chance that he could. And so as he's looking back and thinking about not just Saul, but all of the enemies that he's fought, the Philistines, etc., through the years, he said, "I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock." When everything around you is shaking and seems so unstable, and you're nervous or fearful, anxious, don't know what's going to come next, because nothing seems to be stable in your life. We all go through trials like that. The Lord is our rock. He's stable. He never moves. And we safely cling to Him in those times. The Lord is my fortress, the one that I run into, and I'm safe from all of the arrows and the attacks of the enemy. He's my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge. The way this is written, the Lord is my rock, my fortress, my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield, the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. It's like this is just an eruption of praise out of David's spirit and mouth. How does the Lord become our fortress? A very special passage in Psalm 91, I think, tells us, how do we run into the Lord as a strong refuge or as a fortress or as a high tower? Verse 1, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust." And I think that's the first way that the Lord becomes our fortress, our rock in times of trouble. You place your trust in Him by choice. You know, anything that is supernatural like this, there has to be a deliberate choice. It doesn't happen on its own, because our default is to trust in the flesh or to trust in the world system. Our default is fleshly, not spiritual. So anytime we make a spiritual choice, a spiritual decision, it's an act of our volition, of our will. And so in these times, we have to say, I take my eyes off of the circumstances. I take my eyes off of any worldly wisdom, off of any human source. And I put my trust in God. God will deliver me. And I look to none else. And that's when He becomes a fortress that surrounds you. And as you decisively, deliberately place your trust in Him, taking your eyes off of anyone or anything else, He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. And like we've shared in the past, the snare of the fowler are the surprises in life. The snare of the fowler, the fowl didn't see the snare. They were caught unexpectedly. And so that's talking about the surprises of our life, that the disasters that come when we least expected them. He also delivers us from the deadly pestilence. The deadly pestilence is just talking about being overwhelmed. How many of you have been there? Where you're just overwhelmed with emotion and dread and loneliness and fatigue. But as we place our trust in God, as we wait upon Him, our strength is renewed. He will cover you with His pinions, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. And then further on down in Psalms 91, we see another way that the Lord becomes our refuge, our fortress, because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge. Because you dwell in the Lord, no evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. The Lord always uses this analogy of Him becoming our dwelling place. God is my dwelling place. Jesus said it this way, abide in me and I in you. So how do we dwell in God as a dwelling place? How do we abide in Him? It's all about relationship, isn't it? There's nothing magical or mathematical, or there's no routine or systematic procedure that we do and to cause this to happen. It's all relationship. Everything about God working in your life is all about relationship. Do you know Him? Are you communing with Him? Is He ever on your heart and mind? Are you meditating on His Word day and night? Are you praying without ceasing? No matter what you're involved in throughout the day, is your heart yearning to be with Him, yearning for Him to help you, yearning for His strength and His ability and His power? You've made the Lord your dwelling place. I'm not going to go anywhere today without the Lord. It's that attitude. And verse 14 says it all, because He holds fast to me in love. Is that the posture of your heart? Do you just love being around the Lord? Do you love talking to Him? Do you love singing to Him? Do you love worshiping Him? Do you love telling Him how wonderful He is and everything He means to you? Do you know how desperately you need Him every moment of the day? Do you hold fast to the Lord throughout the day? And is it a thing of love because He's your cherished companion? He's the lover of your soul. You don't want to be without Him for even one moment. Because He holds fast to me in love, I will what? I will deliver him. That's how He becomes your refuge and your mighty fortress. When your spirit clings to Him throughout the day. And when you get distracted and you get preoccupied with something you're doing, as soon as the air clears, as soon as your mind clears, your heart is right back with the Lord. And then thirdly, when He calls to me, I will answer Him. That's how the Lord becomes a mighty refuge in your life, a deliverer, a strong tower, a fortress for you to run into. Number one, it's when you trust in Him. And you don't trust in any other resource or source but Him. No human, no worldly method. My trust is in God and in God alone. He'll be your fortress. Secondly, it's when you make Him your dwelling place. It's when you hold fast to Him and cling to Him because you love Him so much and you never want to be without Him. Thirdly, He becomes your fortress and your refuge when you call on Him. And that is something that I want to take a look at here. Reading on in Psalms 18, we're not going to read the whole chapter. But here in verse 3, continuing on, I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. The cords of death encompassed me. The torrents of destruction assailed me. The cords of Sheol entangled me. The snares of death confronted me. What he's describing there in verse 4 and verse 5 is there is no way out. There's no escape. This is a hopeless case. I'm overwhelmed. I am doomed, and there's nothing I can do. In my distress, I called upon the Lord. To my God, I cried for help. Watch what happens when David prays. From his temple, he heard my voice, and my cry to Him reached His ears. Then the earth reeled and rocked. The foundations also of the mountains trembled and quaked because He was mad. God was ticked. Smoke went up from His nostrils. A devouring fire came from His mouth. Glowing coals flamed forth from Him. Hollywood couldn't even do this justice. Can you just imagine what's happening here? He bowed the heavens and came down. Thick darkness was under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He came swiftly on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, thick clouds dark with water. Out of the brightness before him, hailstones and coals of fire broke through his clouds. The Lord also thundered in the heavens. The Most High uttered his voice, hailstones, coals of fire. He sent out his arrows and scattered them. He flashed forth lightning and routed them. Then the channels of the sea were seen, and the foundations of the world were laid bare at your rebuke. What's causing all of this ruckus? What is causing the Lord to have such a vehement response? His child cried out to him. At the blast of the breath of your nostrils, the foundations of the world were laid bare. He sent from on high. He took me. He drew me out of many waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a broad place. He rescued me. Why? Why did the Lord have such a response? Why did he come with such speed, with such power, with such might that he laid bare the foundations of the earth? Why? What caused all of this? Because he what? He delighted in me. Remember that movie with Lee Strobel? And he came to that one part in the movie. Why would Jesus do all of this? Why would he go to the cross? Why would his heavenly Father allow him to go to the cross and die in such a torturous, miserable way? And what was the response? Love. Makes absolutely no sense to us. For a people who wickedly rebelled and who deserve to die, they deserve everything that Jesus received on the cross. Who in the world, in their right mind, would come to the earth and die in such a miserable, torturous way for the likes of you and me? Why? And why would God respond with such force and might to David's prayer? Because he delights in us. Now let me ask you a question. When you pray and when you go to Father and you commune with him and you make your requests known to him, do you imagine that this is the way God is responding to your prayer? Or do you think, your requests kind of gets put at the bottom of the stack and maybe next year God will get to it sometime, somehow? How do you see your relationship with Father? How do you see his love for you? Do you believe that God responds just as fervently to your prayer as he did to David's prayer? You have to. And you have to realize God runs to my aid. He runs to my need because he delights in me. He loves me that much. It's beyond comprehension. Why on earth would a holy God place such value in me? Why would he love me so much? But it's what the New Testament says. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 18. For since he himself was tempted in that which he has suffered, he is able to come to the aid of those who are tempted. And that word, that phrase, come to the aid, comes from two Greek words. One of those words is to cry, and the other word is to run. And literally, that phrase means that God runs to the cry of those in danger. because he's been here. Because he was tempted, because he suffered as a man. And yes, he does respond to your prayer the same way that he responded to David's prayer. And that's the confidence you need to have as you go to your Heavenly Father.